What if the food you associate with Korea, the dishes that feel inseparable from its identity, its streets, its culture, didn't actually start there? What if some of the most beloved staples of Korean cuisine were born somewhere else entirely, traveled across borders, and got transformed into something so distinctly Korean that the original origin was quietly forgotten? This isn't a story about theft or imitation. It's a story about what happens when a culture gets hold of something foreign and refuses to leave it alone. These are 10 foods you think are Korean, but they aren't. Food number 1, ramyeon. It's 2 in the morning. The water is boiling. You tear open the packet, dump in the brick of noodles, and that rust-red powder hits the steam, and the whole kitchen smells like salvation. Ramyeon isn't just a meal in Korea. It's a ritual, a comfort, a cultural institution so deeply embedded in daily life that it feels ancient, inevitable, Korean to its core. Except it isn't. Instant ramen was invented in Japan in 1958 by a man named Momofuku Ando, who spent a year developing a way to make noodles shelf-stable, affordable, and fast. Korea adopted the concept and then did something remarkable with it. It made the noodles angrier, spicier, more aggressive. Shin Ramyeon didn't just adapt a Japanese invention, it arguably surpassed it. Which raises the question this entire list keeps asking. Does it matter where something started, if what it became belongs entirely to someone else? Food number 2, Mandu. There is something about dumplings that feels universal and deeply personal at the same time. In Korean homes, Mandu appears at the holiday table, in the hands of grandmothers who never measure anything, folded with a specific pinch that every family insists is the only correct way. It feels ancient. It feels Korean. And it is ancient, just not originally Korean. Mandu traces directly back to Chinese mantu and jiaozi traditions, carried into the Korean peninsula centuries ago, along trade routes that moved goods, languages, and food cultures across borders simultaneously. The word Mandu itself shares the same linguistic root as the Chinese mantu. The blueprint arrived from China. But here is what matters. Korea didn't simply reproduce it. The fillings changed. The folding styles diverged. The ceremonies built around Mandu became distinctly, irreversibly Korean. Some foods don't just travel, they immigrate. And Mandu became a citizen. Food number 3, Bingsu. Walk into any Korean dessert cafe in summer and you will find it. A mountain of shaved ice, so elaborately constructed it barely looks edible. Condensed milk pools at the edges. Tteok, fresh fruit, red bean, mochi, all arranged with the kind of precision that makes you hesitate before destroying it with a spoon. Modern Bingsu is a spectacle, and Korea owns that spectacle completely. But shaved ice itself is not a Korean invention. Shaved ice desserts existed in Tang Dynasty China and in Heian-era Japan centuries before Korean Bingsu had a name. The concept traveled, as food always does, and landed in Korea, where something interesting happened. The practicality got stripped away, and the artistry took over. Korea did not invent shaved ice. It invented the obsession with shaved ice. It turned a simple ancient concept into a modern cultural statement. That transformation? Entirely and unmistakably Korean. Food number 4, Tteok. Few foods carry as much cultural weight as Tteok does in Korea. It appears at weddings, at ancestral rites, at birthdays, at the turning of every significant moment in a Korean life. Gifting a Tteok is an act of respect. Eating it together is an act of belonging. It is woven so deeply into Korean identity that calling it anything other than Korean feels almost offensive. And yet, the concept of pounded rice cakes traces back to ancient China, spreading gradually across East Asia the way foundational food ideas always do, quietly, through proximity and necessity. Here is what makes the story interesting, though. Korean Tteok diverged so dramatically from its origins, in shape, in texture, in ceremonial meaning, in the sheer extraordinary variety of forms it took, that it became something China would barely recognize. Some foods travel so far from their source, they stop being borrowed. Tteok stopped being borrowed a long time ago. Food number 5, Naengmyeon. On a sweltering Korean summer day, there is nothing quite like it. The noodles are dense and chewy, almost resistant. The broth is ice cold, bracingly clean, with a depth that takes hours to build. South Koreans claim it proudly, and they should. But the full story of Naengmyeon is more complicated, more fractured, and far more human than most people realize. Naengmyeon didn't originate in Seoul. It was born in Pyongyang and Hamhung, in what is now North Korea. The buckwheat noodles at its core carry strong ties to Mongolian and Manchurian grain traditions introduced into the peninsula during the Goryeo dynasty. The cold broth style itself was shaped heavily by Manchurian cold food culture. So how did it become a South Korean staple? Not through trend, not through trade, through tragedy. When the Korean War tore the peninsula apart, refugees fleeing south carried naengmyeon with them. A dish crossed a border that would never reopen, and settled into a cuisine that eventually forgot it had ever come from somewhere else. That is not just a food story. That is a history lesson served cold. Food number 6, cream cheese garlic bread. You have seen the videos. The golden loaf scored into pull-apart sections, each pocket stuffed with a molten mixture of cream cheese, garlic, and butter, baked until the outside shatters and the inside collapses into something that has no business being that good. It went viral globally as a Korean food trend, and Korea absolutely deserves the credit for what it built. But garlic bread is Italian-American. Cream cheese is American. Korea didn't invent either ingredient or either concept. What Korea did is look at two existing ideas, combine them with an instinct for indulgence and an eye for the dramatic, and create something that neither origin could have imagined alone. This might be the most honest food on the entire list. It never claimed to be ancient. It never pretended to be traditional. It was just audaciously, unapologetically delicious. And the whole world noticed. Food number 7, Dalgona coffee. It was 2020. The world was locked inside, and suddenly every kitchen counter had a bowl, a whisk, and someone aggressively beating instant coffee and sugar into a thick caramel-colored foam that got spooned over cold milk and photographed approximately 1 billion times. It spread as a Korean trend. It was branded a Korean invention. Except whipped instant coffee had been popular in India, where it is known as Fenty Hui coffee, and in Macau, long before Korea ever filmed it. Here is the detail that reframes everything. Korea didn't invent the technique. It invented the moment, the aesthetic, the audience. It understood instinctively how to package something tactile and satisfying into content that a locked-down world desperately needed to consume. In the social media age, the country that films it first owns it. And in 2020, Korea filmed it first. Food number 8, Hotteok. Picture a winter street market in Korea. The air is sharp and cold. Vendors line the walkways, and somewhere in the middle of it all is a sizzling pan and a small crowd of people who aren't moving until they get what they came for. A hotteok, pulled fresh from the oil, the dough golden and slightly crisp on the outside, and inside a molten pocket of brown sugar, cinnamon, and crushed nuts that burns your fingers and your tongue and is completely worth it. It feels like it has always been there. But Hotteok was introduced to Korea by Chinese merchants who migrated during the late 1800s. The original concept came directly from Chinese Bing flatbread culture. What Korea did with it, the sweet filling, the winter ritual, the street corner devotion, was a complete reinvention of the flavor and the feeling. Hotteok is a story about what immigrants carry across borders, and what the place they arrive in refuses to leave unchanged. Food number 9, PPOPGI. If you have seen Squid Game, you know the scene. A contestant hunches over a small tin of melted sugar, pressing a needle with surgical precision into a thin, brittle shape, trying not to crack it. A billion viewers watched that scene and assumed they were seeing something uniquely, essentially Korean. And Korea did make it iconic. But sugar candy street snacks of this style trace directly back to Japanese dagashi culture, the cheap, cheerful street confections that flourished during the Meiji and Taisho eras. Japanese street vendors were selling nearly identical sugar-pulled candy snacks long before Korea popularized the form. The detail that stops most people cold is the name itself. Dalgona is believed to derive from a Japanese confectionery term. Korea didn't invent PPOPG. It just gave it the most powerful distribution platform a food has ever had. Sometimes the story told about a food travels further than the food itself. Squid Game didn't just entertain the world, it rewrote the origin story of a piece of candy. Food number 10, japchae. It appears at every Korean celebration without exception. The glass noodles gleam under the light, stir-fried with vegetables, beef, and sesame oil, the whole dish carrying a quiet elegance that feels centuries old. And it is centuries old, just not in the form anyone recognizes. The glass noodles at the heart of japchae, called Naengmyeon, derive from Chinese bean thread noodle traditions that traveled into Korea the way so many culinary ideas did, through proximity, through trade, through the slow movement of ingredients across borders. But here's the detail that genuinely stops people. The original japchae, served in the Joseon royal court, contained no noodles at all. It was a stir-fried vegetable dish. The noodles were added later, under Chinese culinary influence, and the dish we now consider the definitive version is a relatively recent reinvention of something that looked nothing like it. Which means the most celebrated dish on the Korean festive table is not ancient in its current form. It is an evolution, a remix. And somehow that makes it more remarkable, not less. Korea didn't preserve japchae. It perfected it. Every cuisine in the world is a conversation, not a monologue. The foods on this list didn't weaken Korean food culture by having origins elsewhere. They proved something far more interesting, that Korea has always been one of history's great transformers. Things arrive, and Korea refuses to leave them alone. It pushes them further, makes them spicier, more dramatic, more ceremonial, more viral, more meaningful than they ever were before. That is not imitation. That is mastery. And the next time you tear open a packet of Shin Ramyeon or watch someone crack a Dalgona candy on a screen, remember that the most powerful thing a culture can do is take something foreign and make the whole world forget it ever came from anywhere else. If this changed the way you see Korean food, hit that like button, subscribe to Where Food Began, and tell us in the comments which one surprised you most.